With the release of Alpha 4.3, several new ships are being added to the in-game shops. These ships cover a wide variety of gameplay, from mining to salvage, and of course a couple of combat vessels as well. In today's video, we're going to take a bit of an in-depth look at each of these vehicles. We'll go through where you can buy them, their availability and price in-game, as well as why you may consider adding them to your in-game fleet. So, let's go ahead and get started with the Drake Golem. The Drake Golem is a starter mining ship from Drake Interplanetary that was released a couple of months ago in Alpha 4.1. It is a great way to get into the mining profession if you've never really done that, and it's also available as a starter package for those that are wanting to get into mining straight away. If you're wanting to pick it up in-game, you can pick it up at New Deal in Lorville for approximately 1,058,000 AUEC, which is actually a pretty good price for this little mining ship. That puts it at about a third of the price of the MISC Prospector, which does have a couple of other options beyond what this has, but for that price, you get a really solid ship that can make you some money. On the side here, we can see two 16 SCU bespoke cargo pods that are going to be able to hold a total of 32 SCU of unrefined ore that you're able to mine, which is a pretty decent amount, and actually is the same amount of ore that you could hold in the MISC Prospector. The Golem borrows heavily from other Drake vehicles and ships, such as the Drake Vulture, the Cutter, as well as the Drake Mule. Most of its components are accessed behind these pillars where the engines and landing gear are attached. So you actually have to remove the cargo pods to be able to access the components if you ever need to, but that is where you get to those. Coming around to the front, we do have a couple of nice amenities. We have our storage compartment for the ship, so you can put some extra materials, supplies, and things like that in there. We also have a small weapon rack for a pistol and a med tool on this side. And on the other side of the cockpit here, we have access to our fuel port, as well as another weapon rack for a primary weapon. The Golem comes equipped with very little offensive weaponry. It has two size 1 laser repeaters by default that you can see here. And right down here on the underside of the cockpit, it has two size 1 missiles. So it is capable of defending itself a little bit, but I would not advise getting into any serious combat with this ship. Now, on top of the ship is where the big thing with this vehicle is. You have your bespoke mining head for the Golem. This cannot be changed to any other mining head, but you do have a decent amount of flexibility in that you can add 2 mining modules to it, which can do different things like increase the laser power, they can decrease rock stability. They do have some trade-offs, like maybe they'll make it a little bit hard, they'll increase the resistance on the rock, or maybe you lose a little bit of your inert, you collect more inert materials, but it is a pretty good laser by itself. Again, once you get to bigger ships like the Prospector or the Mole, you do have a little bit more flexibility in that, but for a starter mining ship, this mining head does work pretty well, actually. So now let's take a brief look inside the cockpit of the Drake Golem. We'll go over a few more of its features and then why you may consider adding it to your in-game fleet. So, inside the Drake Golem, we have pretty decent visibility out to the front and to the sides a little bit. Plenty of visibility to see what you're doing with your mining operations. You have 2 MFDs up above you to see your ship status, manage your power, and all those sorts of things. And you have your radar screen in the center there, of course. If we press the M key, that will toggle us into mining mode. And we'll actually see this little animation of the mining head deploying on a little arm here and out in front of the ship. And then you can see it right there in front of you. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to the Drake Golem. Again, it's a very utilitarian ship. It's meant to be no frills, no special anything. It has a job, it does that job, does it pretty well, and it, looks decent while you're doing it. But again, nothing too crazy about it. We'll go ahead and turn off our mining mode again there. And the mining laser will kind of retract on its little arm and go back into its little slot. But that is the Drake Golem. So if you, again, if you want to pick this up in game, you can do it at Lorville, the New Deal ship shop for 1,058,000 AUEC. This would be if you're wanting to get started in the mining profession. If you're a newer player, you could get this after your whatever your starter ship is to get some experience with that. It's pretty reasonably attainable within maybe a couple of hours of doing some missions. And again, it's a great way to get some experience with the mining profession as you work on moving up to bigger ships like the Prospector and the Mole. But that's going to be everything in regards to the Drake Golem. So now let's move on to our next ship, another industry-focused ship, the MISC Fortune. So now we have the MISC Fortune, a variant of the MISC Prospector. And I don't know why that red light's going off in there. The ship should be fine, so we're just going to ignore that. But the MISC Fortune is a pretty recently released ship. I believe it came out back in January of this year. And again, it's a salvage variant of the MISC Prospector. So it does have some alterations to it to enable it to perform salvage. And it has some additional features and actual interior space that the MISC Prospector does not have. Now, if you're wanting to pick this up in 4.3, you can do so again at New Deal in Lorville for 1,890,000 AUEC. So that's not too bad. That puts it at, I believe, a pretty similar ballpark of a price to the Vulture. I think the Vulture might be a little bit more than that. But again, this is sort of a starter salvager. It does have some pros and cons over the Vulture, which we won't touch on a ton in this video. We're mostly just going to focus on the ship itself. So let's start by just talking about a few things on the outside. Biggest thing is on the left and right sides and about the middle of the ship right here. You'll see there's a small little kind of conveyor belt system cargo bay where as you collect RMC and salvage materials when you're salvaging, as the hopper inside the ship fills up, it will automatically dispense 1 SCU containers onto these grids. So you can hold 6 SCU on each side. So that gives you 12 SCU. And then there actually is a little bit of an extra cargo grid that I'll show you in a minute. But that is primarily where you're going to be storing your salvage materials. Then the other thing to touch on is down here at the front of the ship, we have our salvage head. And then these little rectangular tools with the big bright lights on them are your tools for collecting construction materials, or when you fully break down a ship, that is the tools that you will use. So that is all the major features on the outside. I guess one other thing you could mention is it does have a pair of size 1 guns. Again, this thing is not really meant to be in combat, but you do have a little bit of offensive or defensive weaponry aboard. So now let's head to the back of the ship, and we're going to take a look through the inside of the MISC Fortune. So a difference that the Fortune has over the Prospector is the addition of a little elevator here at the back of the ship. Now this is where you actually get a little bit extra cargo space. This, I believe, has 4 total SCU of grid space, which puts the total grid space of the ship at 16, which gives it an official grid slightly higher than the Drake Vulture. You also have, of course, the automatic dispensing cargo boxes on the sides, which the Vulture does not do that entirely for you. So that is a little bit of an advantage you have with this over the Drake Vulture, which is, again, at least at the moment, the most comparable ship to the Fortune. Other things, though, you could put here, if you have like some ship weapons or components that you find, you could put them on this little lift here, and that way they're locked to the grid. And you can take those back, put those in some of your own ships. So now let's head up into the ship. We are greeted with some additional interior space that the MISC Prospector does not have. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get this at some point. We have some component access in the walls. We got our shields, got coolers. And as we go forward, we have access to the 2 hoppers. So the total hopper storage for RMC or construction materials is 13 SCU. When you're salvaging, you can select it to auto eject right here. You can select that on each of the salvage bays over here. And then that way it'll auto eject those boxes onto the cargo grids on the side of the ship. A neat little thing is you do have some little windows that kind of look out. You can kind of see the boxes when they're on there. And you also get a nice little view outside the ship. And then as we proceed forward, we come to the living quarters and additional component access. We have our life support, radar, we have some small storage areas for, I think, a sidearm or a multi-tool. So you have that there you can deploy. Very nice and handy. And then we have our habitation. You do have a bed that you can log out in. You have some personal storage down here. You have an engineering terminal and everything that you need for once we have that gameplay. And then finally, we can proceed into the cockpit where you have wonderful visibility, as you can probably see. And we'll hop in the pilot seat. So again, the pilot seat, you have fantastic visibility, pretty unobstructed all around you, to the sides and front, even down a decent ways. So it makes for a very good view when you're salvaging, and if you're in the prospector when you're mining. You do have 4 MFDs up at the top here in your radar, and of course all the other buttons and doodads that you may need. You can press M to go into your salvage mode, and that'll deploy your salvage head. And that's about it. Then once you find some salvage, you're ready to go. So that is about everything you need to know about the MISC Fortune. Again, this is a sort of starter salvage ship from MISC. You can pick this up in Lorville at the New Deal Ship Shop for just under 1.9 million AUEC. And this is a great way to get started in the salvage profession if you haven't done it much before, or if you're just looking for an alternative to the Drake Vulture. But that is going to do it for the MISC Fortune. So now we are finished with our industry ships for this video, and now we're going to move on to a couple of combat-focused ships. And now we get to the combat ships coming in 4.3. The first is going to be one that I've been looking forward to getting for quite a long time, and that is going to be the F7C Mark II Hornet Ghost. This is a stealth variant of the Hornet. It's been updated, of course, with the other Mark II versions of the Hornet, and we've just been waiting a while to see it come into the game. It had been released at last year's IAE, so it's been quite a while since this was released. So I'm just glad that they are finally getting around to adding it. If you're wanting to pick this up, as far as I'm aware, this is available in New Deal at Lorville again, and that is going to be available for 5,384,500 AUEC, which puts it a little bit above some of the other fighters you can purchase, like the F7C, but you do have the stealth additions to it, which, you know, I think does warrant a bit of a price increase. But for a ship like this, that's pretty reasonable. Now again, like I mentioned, the big thing with this ship is its stealth reduction. You get a approximately 28% reduction to all of your emissions, so cross-section, infrared, and electromagnetic with the Hornet Ghost. So it makes it so you can sneak up on people a little bit better. You can get the drop on someone if you're in like a PvE or a PvP scenario. And it also comes with a really, really nice default paint job. This kind of black with the red accents is very, very nice looking. So I'm definitely going to be rocking this ship a decent amount in the upcoming patch. Now, by default, the ship only comes with wing-mounted guns, as you can see here. You have 2 size 4 Revenant Gatling ballistic Gatlings. You can add other weapons to the ship. There is a nose turret that you can buy that would go right down here, that you could put 2 size 2 weapons on. And then you also can obtain, I believe that this might also have been added to in-game shops. Otherwise, there are some other ways you can get it. You could get a top turret up here that can hold 2 size 3 weapons, or if you happen to get the Super Hornet turret, it'll have the 2 size 3s and an additional 8 size 1 missiles. So you can put 6 guns on this thing in total, and it's quite a lot of firepower, and again, in a pretty stealthy package. Besides that, you do have a lower mounted missile bay that gives you, I believe, 8 size 1 missiles by default. You can switch those up to 4 size 2s or even 2 size 3s. So you do have a decent amount of flexibility in your weapons loadout. Now this ship comes with all size 1 components. You're going to have 2 size 1 power plants, 2 size 1 shields, size 1 quantum drive, I believe 2 size 1 coolers as well. So it is slightly different to the F7A that has everything's the same on that except for it has a single size 2 power plant. But right now that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. Here we can see inside the cockpit of the Hornet. Looks pretty much the same as the F7C, F7A, and all those sorts of things. You have your 2 MFDs, so you can manage all your shields and your power and all that if you need to. You do have pretty decent visibility. There's a couple of struts, but they're not really in the way that much. So you can see off to the front, the sides, up. You can even see behind you a decent amount. So it's a very, very forgiving cockpit. But that is the Hornet Ghost. Now this would be, if you're wanting to get this, this would be for someone who wants a stealth combat vessel that has a bit more punch than things like the Aegis Saber, the Saber Firebird, or the Asperia Talon. You won't have as much of stealth capability as those ships have, but you do gain a decent amount of firepower in return. But that is basically everything for the Hornet Ghost. Again, you can obtain this in Lorville at New Deal for approximately 5.4 million AUEC. So with that, let's move on to our last ship that's coming in Alpha 4.3, which is one that I'm also quite excited for, and that is the Mirai Guardian. Alright, so last but certainly not least, we have the Mirai Guardian Heavy Fighter. This originally came out in with 4.0, so it's been out for approximately 8 months now. It also, when it came out, it also had a QI variant, which gives up a little bit of its maneuverability for a quantum dampener. That is available to obtain in-game through Wicklow at the moment, but not through the in-game shops. This will be available at New Deal in Lorville, and I believe Area 18 at Astro Armada as well, for 6,615,000 AUEC, which in terms of heavy fighters is not too bad. It's pretty much in the middle of the pack. It's very similar price to like the Scorpius, the Anvil Hurricane. It's a little bit less than some of the Vanguard variants, so not too bad for a heavy fighter, but you do get some nice stuff with this ship. The big thing you may notice is you have 2 pilot-controlled size 5 weapons on each side of the main body here, which do put out a decent bit of damage. If you they come stock with some laser cannons, but you could throw some size 5 attritions on there, some size 5 Galdrian repeaters for faster velocity, more accurate shots on there, and you can do quite a bit of damage. It also comes with I believe 16 size 2 missiles. You can change these racks to be size 3s. I think you could even put a single size 4 on there. You could even switch them down to size 1 missiles, so you could have a bajillion size 1s to throw at people. A couple of interesting things to note on the outside of the ship here that I think a lot of people have missed in the past. On the right wing here, you do actually have a outside storage locker. Gives you 450k micro SCU, so very convenient. And then opposite that, on the left wing, we have a small weapon locker that'll fold out here. You can put on 2 primary weapons, and you got a couple of sidearm slots as well. The Guardian certainly draws heavily from the art styling of the Mirai Fury, but of course expands on it because it's, much bigger ship. It's got a lot of kind of armor plating on the outer wings, which do help quite a bit in its survivability. The wings will take quite a bit of damage for you before the damage starts going to the main hull, which definitely lets you survive for quite a bit longer. In the back here, we can see the 2 main engines. These are very similar to the Furies in that they will gimbal around, so they'll turn around when you're retro thrustering, they'll turn when you're maneuvering, and all that sort of good stuff. So there are technically 2 ways to get into the Guardian. You can actually enter at the little bubble cockpit at the front that you may have saw a moment ago, but another way you can get in is through a little elevator right at the back here. There's some little lights that turn on, and a little elevator pops out. So we'll go ahead and head up into the Guardian and take a brief look at the interior. The interior of the Guardian is actually pretty nice in my opinion. I really like the red lighting with little bits of kind of bluish white, some little more warmish lights up here. Very well detailed. This is a heavy fighter that has an interior, which makes it, I believe, this and the Vanguard have interiors. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any other heavy fighters that do. I might be missing one though. So if I'm missing one, make sure to let me know in the comments. So that does give it a little bit of an advantage in that you can access the components internally. You're able to log out on this particular one. So that's very, very nice. But like I said, you got component access back here. You have another small weapon locker. You have a suit locker as well, which, you know, hopefully at some point will come in handy. And then as we proceed forward, this is kind of the primary engineering room. You have all the rest of your components. You have an engineering terminal, which once we get engineering in the game, I'm sure that'll be quite useful to have. And then we can go forward into the small habitation section, which is very nice and cozy, and it's probably my favorite area on the ship. We have our bed over here. You have a little personal storage locker there as well for some additional storage capabilities beyond that outer locker. Then you have your little kitchenette area and a small little bathroom as well. Then we can proceed through this small little hallway up towards the pilot seat. We'll go ahead and enter. It's got a nice little animation for you to get in and flip around and get all settled in your seat. And we are presented with our MFDs, which actually did get a recent update. They used to be actually up at kind of the top of the screen, the top of the cockpit here. But with the Guardian MX's release at Invictus, they slightly revised the styling of this. They gave Mirai their own kind of look on the MFDs, and they look a lot better in my opinion. So this is where you're able to access, of course, your ship information, manage all that sort of stuff. In terms of visibility, you have excellent upwards, downwards, front-facing, and left and right visibility. Very few obstructions in the way. I guess the wings are, you know, they're a little bit in the way, but I don't think when I've flown this, I never really notice it. So you, again, this is a heavy fighter, so you got lots of missiles and you got lots of firepower and a good amount of durability to go against other heavy fighters, bigger ships, and things like that. I have had no problem taking on a lot of AI missions with like Connies and other heavy fighters and whatnot. You can tank quite a lot in this, and you can put out quite a lot of damage as well. So biggest reason you want to get this is if you want something that you can run around in, do some decent combat in. You can log out on it, you can store some stuff on it. So if you're doing maybe some bunker looting, or you're looting like some outposts in Pyro for rare gear or things like that, you can use this ship. You can get around pretty quick because it has a size 2 quantum drive, and you're pretty well protected while you're doing so. So that is basically everything there is to know about the Mirai Guardian. Again, this can be obtained in New Deal at Lorville, and I believe Area 18 at Astro Armada as well for 6,615,000 AUEC, which again, this is a pretty good deal. So I'm definitely going to be picking it up when the patch goes live. But make sure to let me know what you think down in the comments. Are you going to pick this up? Are you going to pick any of the other ships up? I'd love to hear what you think. But that is going to do it for this video, going over all of the new ships that will be purchasable in-game with Alpha 4.3. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, as it really helps the channel, and if you want to receive more videos about Star Citizen updates, patches, ships, Squadron 42 news, and more, definitely subscribe to the channel, as I will be covering all of that, especially as we head closer to CitizenCon and IAE. I hope you enjoyed this video though. Make sure to let me know any thoughts you have down in the comments below. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, I will see you in the verse.